Okay, we're live for the Potomac Valley Scottish Fiddle Club workshop, February 2023. And there are some actual people here live, which is exciting, and then live stream. So if you're on the live stream, if you want to send me a quick message to say if you're hearing and seeing what you need to see and hear, that would help. Then I'm reassured that we're all good to go. Here's the A. And anybody here has already tuned, but if you're on the live stream, that's your reference. Okay, so this month's music, I always have a theme for the workshop, and this month's music is I would give a little bit of background. We just had Robert Burns' birthday. Robert Burns was Scotland's national poet. He lived in the 1700s. I think his dates are 1760 to 1795 or something like that. He's like right around the time of Mozart. And he also only lived to be about 35, like Mozart. And so Robert Burns is celebrated every year. It's basically an excuse to get into Scottish music, Scottish dance, Scottish food, just sort of celebrate Scotland. There are some typical things that happen at your Robert Burns dinner. One is that they recite Burns's Ode to the Haggis, which is a very tongue-in-cheek type of poem. It was humorous back then, and it still is funny now. It purports that anyone who does not eat haggis is going to be, weak and like a withered reed. And whereas the haggis eater is going to be strong and mighty, and things like that. And it goes on and on. It's quite funny. So they recite the Ode to the Haggis, and then they usually have a toast to Robert Burns, followed by a toast to the lasses and a toast to the laddies. So I took one of those themes, and it's a toast to the laddies. So all of our music today is themed around lads or laddies. So I have Highland Laddie and Miller Lads and the Merry Lads of Ayr and a number of other tunes. So I was thinking that we'd maybe start with a jig called the Kilty Lads. And obviously these are lads wearing kilts, right? What could be more Scottish? Yeah. So let me play the tune for you, Kilty Lads. Now that tune can also be played as a march, but that would be just slowing it down and playing it a little more spiky.
The name of it again?
Kilty Lads.
Okay.
So as in wearing kilts.
Right.
And we do have people who have written in and said hearing and seeing. I'm so glad the stream is audible and visible. That's always a nice thing to have. All right, so Kilty Lads is in the key of E minor. And come on in. We have more people arriving. It's always nice. Okay. And so it's in the key of E minor. And the pickup note is a B note. Okay, so we find that pickup note. And then the beginning of the tune actually starts with climbing up and down the scale. Starting on the note E. So let's just join in. So this may seem kind of basic at first, but at the same time, if you imitate my bowing, you're going to get a little more out of it because we have a long note. This is in jig time, which is 6/8. So it's a quarter note and an eighth note. Obviously, the eighth note is a shorter note. So if you're going down, up, you necessarily have to get a little drive to that up bow. Otherwise, you're just going to unevenly walk your way off the end of the tip of the bow. So. Okay, so that is in fact the first 2 bars of the tune. So you've already learned 2 for the price of 1. The next bit is arpeggio work. We're starting on the note G and playing the notes of the G arpeggio, which are G, B, and D. And I'm adding the B going back down. And now I want to give you the rhythm for that. Okay, and next bit, we're now on bar 4. Arpeggio in the key of D this time, so it's A, F sharp, D. Okay, except I want to put some lilt into that, so it's. And then that's only half of the 4th bar. The other half of that bar is right up the scale. So we had. Our 4-bar phrase together, I think. You remember how everything started?
B.
B pickup note, yes. And again. G arpeggio. D arpeggio. Let's do it again. How's that going? Yeah? Okay. And of course, if you're online as well and you want me to repeat something or answer a question, just type it in and I will see it. All right, we're halfway through the first part. The second 4-bar phrase starts the same way, but it does not continue the same way. It's right up the scale instead of back down. Because that is where we're headed. So let's try that. So far, so good? Okay. The ending, we're right here on this E note, we're going to go. That's half the 7th bar. Here's the other half. So the 7th bar is. And the 8th bar to finish it off. The last 2 bars. So here's the last 4 bars. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so far so good. We've finished the first half of Kilty Lads. How about if we play all 8 bars and repeat them a few times just to get it all put together? Do you remember the beginning of it? Right, a B pickup note. Yes, that's still going to be useful when we put the 8 bars together. So. Arpeggio. Okay, how are we doing? Good? Ready for more? Yes. Okay. So if nobody says anything, I answer my own questions, right? Okay. So the B part has some repeating elements that we're going to see coming back many times. So the first thing that does repeat is the pickup note, which is a B. Yeah, so. And the good thing about this B pickup note is it's a convenient note right in the middle for either going down to E or going up to E. And that's what it does in the B part is. So let's do that. I'm going to add one more note because it's a transition to what comes next. It's a C sharp. Yeah, it really is C sharp. It's not like this. I'm not sure if it's C sharp or not, so I'll play something in the middle. No, it's C sharp. It really is. And the reason is this tune in E minor has two sharps because it's based off a D major scale. It's a modal tune, and the mode is Dorian for people who keep track of modes. It just means that you play in the key of two sharps, but your starting point, instead of being D for a D major scale, your starting point still has those two sharps, but you start on the E note. And you get a minor that has this sort of interesting C sharp in it. It changes the chord structure of the tune, and it's pretty cool. All right, so we do have a C sharp, the beginning of the B part. And where's it going to go? It really has to go to a D note. Yeah, it's saying, I'm about to go to a D. That's why, right? So the next two bars are a descending scale with a hole in it. We're leaving out the C sharp, and we're coming down the scale. Okay, so here's our beginning of the B part again. Let's do that. How's that? So far, so good? All right. Our next four bars are almost the same. Has that B pickup note. All the same. Now, it ends unresolved at the end of the 8 bars because you're going to repeat this part. And otherwise, it's the same. So the only difference here is that's right down the scale the first time. Skip down and play those F sharp, D, A, F sharp, the D arpeggio notes as a way of sort of keeping you hanging and unresolved. So let's just play that. It's actually bars 7 and 8. It's the second phrase ending. Okay, that sounded good. All right, next bit is the same as the first part. Remember that? Okay, so we learned the third phrase pretty fast because the tune just reused the first phrase. The fourth phrase is really similar to all of these. And there you finally resolve. Okay, I'm going to mention this this specifically because it is different from before. Before we had the descending scale, and we always had the G in there. Here, in order to get to that E note faster, you skip the G note, skip to F sharp, so then you can get to the E. So let's just do the last 2 bars there. Okay, sounds good. Let's put it together. The whole B part. So 2 phrases that are identical, the first and third. The second and fourth, very, very similar with minor adjustments to the ending. So just watch for the endings, keep alert for the endings, and we're good to go. B part. Unresolved. Final ending. Okay. We could probably use a little more practice on getting those assorted, but I think it might be best done if we put in the context of the whole tune so you get a sense of where these little adjustments belong. Okay, so that gets us remembering, how did this start?
B.
B, pickup note. Yes, and then what?
E.
Climb the scale, right? Up and down the scale. Arpeggios. Climb the scale. Unresolved. Final ending. Skip the G. From the beginning. I messed up. Sorry. Let's try that again. Right up to high E, and to the ending. B part. All right, so that's Kilty Lads. We could go a little faster. Anybody want to try it full dancing speed? Who's up for that? Sure. Okay. So a little faster. And one thing about this tune is that is actually a more reasonable prospect for a tune that you just learned because it doesn't have a lot of notes in it. Your typical jig has 6 notes per bar. This one has mostly 4 notes per bar. So it's a sort of 2/3 of the effort gets you the full effect of a jig. So I say that's a good deal, along with all of the recycled bits that you just get to reuse. This is a good bang for the buck. You invest in learning it and you get a lot of mileage. So good sort of tune to know. Here we go. Okay, so that is Kilty Lads. And I think the one risk actually is once you know this tune really well, it's really easy to play it too fast because it doesn't have a lot of notes to slow you down. So just keep that in mind for the future. All right. Well, how about another tune by ear? Yeah. All right. I do have a lot of jigs this month, but I also have some reels, a strathspey, a hornpipe, a slow air. No, 2 slow airs. So what are you in the mood for? And then I'll tell you whether I think it's suitable to teach it by ear.
Hornpipe.
A hornpipe. Why, sure. That is a very suitable tune. Okay. So our theme, of course, is the toast to the lads. Which I explained earlier for those who weren't here yet. I'll just recap briefly. We just had Robert Burns' birthday, Scotland's national poet. They always honor him with reciting his poem, The Ode to the Haggis, a toast to Robert Burns, a toast to the lasses, and a toast to the laddies. So I'm taking that theme of the toast to the lads, and these are all tunes about lads. So this tune is pretty straightforward. The title of it is The Lads Like Beer. And actually this is not some tongue-in-cheek modern thing. This is a 19th century tune. And we've looked at the compositions of this particular fiddler before. The composer is James Hill. He lived in the 1800s. I should have looked up his dates. But I think he was like 1840s to 1880s was like his main active time. And he was born in Scotland, but in this sort of southern border region, and then spent a lot of time living in Northumbria, which is northern England. And there's, in general, just a whole lot of traffic between the borders region of Scotland and Northumbrian music. So James Hill spent a lot of time living in Newcastle, and his job was to be a pub fiddler. And so if you play in a pub, are you going to write a tune and call it The Lads Don't Like Beer? No, if you work at a pub, it's going to be The Lads Like Beer, because your job is to attract people to come into the pub and hopefully buy beer to support the pub. So right. So here is the tune. It, like many hornpipes, it can be played in a slow version or a fast version. This one I usually hear as a fast hornpipe, but I'm going to start by playing it slowly. Sorry.
This is in F or B flat.
It is in F. It is in F, and I just have to tell you that a whole lot of James Hill's tunes are in B flat, and some of them are in keys like E. He was a hot shot. He's definitely a hot shot fiddler. His most famous tunes are the Newcastle hornpipe, Bee's Wing, yeah, and there's another one that I'm forgetting. Gosh, there's some of them that I play all the time, some James Hill tunes. But a lot of hornpipes are in flat keys, and they're written by fiddlers. And it's because you can do this little hornpipe maneuver of like a half step below. And if you're in the key of B flat, which is a lot better than having to do that in the key of A, where you have to keep changing strings to do that little maneuver. So the flat keys were really definitely favored for hornpipes because of the types of decorations that were preferred with those tunes. So let's get in the mindset of the key of F. It's really not that bad of a key. Trust me, I do love F. And you will too. Okay, so let's find our F. B is flat. C is natural, so it's low. And F is natural, so it's low. So as long as you get in mind, your second finger is going to be in the lower position if you're playing a violin. Of course, if you're playing a different instrument, it's going to be a different matter. But for a lot of other instruments, the key of F is also nice, unless you're playing a wooden flute. So in which case, get one with keys. or get a wooden flute in a different key, because that is also possible. But or switch to whistle for this one. So key of F, your second finger is going to be low, whichever string you're on. That second finger is going to be in the lower position, not sharp. And then your first finger on the A string and the E string is the B flat note, the F note. Those will also be low. And everything else is fingered about the way you'd expect. So it is not really that bad. I mean, there are keys much worse than this to play on the violin.
I know that.
So let's get our scale going once again. Let's keep going. High enough. Let's come down. Okay, we have encompassed the entire range of this tune. We don't need to go any higher or lower because there aren't any notes in this tune out of that range. So we start off by 2 pickup notes coming down the scale, and then we're going to continue on down. But let's find A and G. And that F is the beginning of bar 1, the first full bar. And here's what happens. It's a scale with holes. Hi, Doug. Come on in. Find a seat. Let's add the pickup notes. Okay, so that is a pentatonic scale that we're using there in the key of F. And we're learning a tune called "The Lads Like Beer," which I think you can probably endorse the learning of this tune, right? Yeah, I thought so. All right, so. One more time on. And going on, we're now going to, yes.
What note does it start at?
That's an A note for the pickup notes. Yeah. I'm about to go right on, though. Okay, one more time. So that Doug asked a question. We'll let him get the practice in. Here we go. From the A note. Very good. Yeah. All right. So pickup notes for the next bar are G and A. Now, we're now going to be doing an arpeggiated section. So we're going to be doing. That's B flat, D, and G note. A transition note of F, F to E. Because the second half of this bar is another arpeggio figure. E, B flat, G. Okay, so the arpeggio figures, let's put them together so that it makes a little bit of sense here. It's okay. I want to put bars 1 and 2 together. Do you remember what we started with?
Hi.
High A, scale, right? The scale with holes. Right? Sounds familiar? And then the arpeggio figure. So we'll do that all again, maybe a little slower so there's time to catch up. Arpeggio, transition, B flat. So that's 2 full bars of notes plus 2 pickup notes. working out? Any particular snags or issues? More practice would be nice, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So the third bar uses that same scale with the holes. You don't get the pickups because you just had a full bar of arpeggio notes. And we're headed to a different ending. So instead of just landing there, we're going to play an F arpeggio. The notes are F, A, C, A. So the third bar sounds like this. It's this scale with the holes, the pentatonic scale, and arpeggio. Working? More or less? Yeah. Last bar of the phrase is big arpeggio. B flat. Hi, B flat. Okay, last two bars put together is pentatonic scale arpeggio, B flat, and again. Okay, I do want to put the 4-bar phrase entirely together. Do you remember how it started? On an A, yeah, pick up notes. High G. F arpeggio. B flats. And that's it. That's the 4-bar phrase. Okay, so we kind of have a decision to make here. Do we want to learn this as a slow hornpipe or as a fast hornpipe?
Right now, a slow one.
Well, then if we're playing it as a,
Super slow. Super slow.
if we're going to learn it as a slow hornpipe, we should add the dotting.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
to work with kilty lads comes in handy because the bowing is really similar. Let's play. Okay. That's all right.
Did you call it a hornpipe?
Yes, this is a hornpipe.
Doesn't a hornpipe have this 3/4 note?
I know.
figure in it?
It is a hornpipe.
It's a fraud.
So yeah, so a hornpipe does usually have bum 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 at the end. Now, and the form is weird because a hornpipe is normally an 8-bar phrase plus another 8-bar or 16-bar phrase. And the first 8-bar phrase is repeated, so the form is 32 bars long. This tune, no matter how you do the repeats, is maximum of 16 bars. And it really does look like a reel. Why is it called a hornpipe? Well, because James Hill was famed as a hornpipe composer. He called it a hornpipe.
Well, he called everything a hornpipe.
Yeah, because he called just about everything he played a hornpipe. That was his claim to fame was composing hornpipes.
Papa gets to say.
So are you saying it's more like a reel that can be played as a slow hornpipe?
Yes. And when you speed it up to quick time horn, the quick hornpipe style, it sounds just like a reel, as Doug very accurately pointed out. So, why is it called a hornpipe? Sometimes you can come up with a really good reason, like, oh, you see that little figure there? That is, characteristic of the hornpipe. Not in this tune. At your best, you can say, well, it sort of, dances around the dump, bum, bum. No, it doesn't. That's not a hornpipe ending. And so he's completely right. Other than James Hill said, this is a hornpipe. We don't really have a reason for calling it a hornpipe. Other than, yeah, sure, you can slow it down and play it with dots and do all the tiddly diddly figures in it, and it would be pretty cool as slow hornpipe style. This one usually gets played as a fast hornpipe, but it's hard to say, what is usual, because some of these tunes have a continuous track record, like, Hill's Beeswing or Newcastle hornpipe. I'm trying to think of, there's another really famous one. It's not. Which one? Kohler's is not by Hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It'll come to me
Tonight.
Yeah, well, I could go get the James Hill book and look it up. But anyway, there's some quite famous James Hill tunes that are played as slow hornpipes. Anyway, so some of them we know from continuous tradition that they're usually played faster. They're usually played slow. Others, it's really clear that you can play it either way you want. This one, I think, because unless you slow it down and put in the dotting, it doesn't even sound hornpipey. That it probably was meant to be played in the faster style. And Hill just called it a hornpipe because his fast tunes were hornpipes. So we've learned half the tune. We learned 4 bars. That repeats. That's the entire A part. Shall we play it one more time before going on? Okay. Next part goes into scale land for a while. So our pickup notes to the B part, C, E, and then we're going to do some scale work. So listen to the scales. So that's 2 bars of scale, and all we did was go down, repeating. That's an F quarter note, which you repeat. F sharp. So that bit, Doug, that bit is the hornpipe characteristic of this tune, because that's a very hornpipey thing to do. So it doesn't have bump, 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 but it does do that little half step below when it's in the key of F. So why is there an F sharp in the tune? Well, because it's a hornpipe. All right. So our second half of the tune, the B part, starting with the pickup notes. Yeah, and it does go to F next. We didn't get there yet. One more time on that. Okay, bar 3 of the B part. That's also very hornpipey. G sharp. Next bit. G natural this time. So this third bar is. That's also a very hornpipey bar. Okay, and then the end of the phrase, 4-bar phrase, is D. Otherwise, it's a very familiar ending. That's a high B flat there. So the third and fourth bars of the phrase are this. Okay. So how about the 4-bar phrase put together? We've got scales. And again. we have 4 more bars to go. The B part's twice as long as the A part. So it's a full 8 bars. And the second 8 bars are quite different from the first. So if you're looking for recycling, not going to happen here. So we just ended on an F note with our scale up because we're headed for that B flat. And now we have kind of our extreme arpeggios is what's coming next. Those are the notes. B flat, C, G, B flat. So if you're playing violin, technically what I recommend is that you bridge the 2 strings with your second finger. That way it's set up. See how I didn't have to move my hand? I set that up so both of those notes are available. Yeah, so that's a little technical trick. Without it, you're like, oh, we got to move that second finger from this string to that string, and there's not time. But if you set it up so you're already on both, the only trick then is to get them both in tune. It's easier said than done, but it's certainly quite possible with practice. Okay, next figure. So it's A, low A, F natural, A. So let's do the 2 extreme arpeggios. We have the one with the B flat on top and the C bridging to the G. And then the A. Okay, how's that? Yeah, working, more or less, with a little practice. Remember, I always start with an easier tune at the beginning, so there's no guarantee that the second tune is quite as easy. It's definitely doable, though, with some practice. So let's move on to the third bar. The second bar of this second phrase of the B part. So we just had the extreme arpeggios. So it's an arpeggio figure out of order. G, B flat, E, G. And then a scale from F. So the arpeggio and the scale. How's that? So far, so good? Okay. Third bar of this phrase, arpeggio is going straight up. First starts on B flat. That's a G. D, G, B flat. one drops it down a note. A, C, F natural, A. So the two long arpeggios put together. And the ending. Okay. I want to move along and put this 4-bar phrase together. So this 4-bar phrase started with 2 pickup notes and then the big extreme arpeggios. The out of order one, little scale, arpeggio up, same out of order arpeggio with the end. Now we need to put both 4-bar phrases of the B part together. Do you remember the beginning of the B part? No, it was a scale. It was a scale. Let me remind you how it went. With the accidental. No. There, I finally got that put together. Let's try it. Scale. Going on. Arpeggio. Out of order. Scale. Arpeggio up. Okay, we kind of made it through. I think we could use a little practice on that, don't you? Yeah. Snorts happen. Yes. Okay. Yes. Elke, they need practice. Let's do it. Scale. So as we're going along, I want to point out one thing that is another reason why you could justify calling this a hornpipe. In the B part there, right here, when we get into this little chromatic descending scale thing, it kind of begs for a little hornpipey treatment. So that kind of triplet decoration. So it's all set up so that you can do these that's very hornpipey. So I'm going extreme here, but it has this little I could definitely fill it in with some hornpipey type of figures. And I bet he would have done that if he played it as a slow hornpipe. Any
I was
questions?
wondering, I don't know if I'm just mixing up different styles of music. Like, would you also, if you're not doing the triplets in there,
Mhm.
would you like bow it? I don't know, like on the off, like
Yes,
Like
yeah,
split
all
it
this. If
differently?
you want to do real hornpipe bowings, there are several options. So there's a 3 in a bow with a 3 up, 1 down. There's also cross bowing. Which I think actually fits this hornpipe pretty nicely. Not for the arpeggio sections. I wouldn't do it. That's just awkward. But so there's the 3 in a bow there. So that's demonstrating a whole bunch of the different possibilities of hornpipe bowings. And the whole point is that you can switch seamlessly from one to the other. So I wasn't announcing, oh, now I'm switching to the other style. You can be consistent about it, but it's only to the point that the tune can bear it. So when I did that long section of bowing across the beat, it was really obvious that works nicely in this scale section, but it doesn't work nicely in the arpeggio section.
And even in that scale section, could you choose to do it part of the time and not?
Yes, right. And the whole deal with these bowings is that once you work them out, the entrances and exits all patch together seamlessly. So you're not going to be doing and then like, oh, got to reset. Now we can do the no, it just so I'm just going in and out of the different types of hornpipe bowings. All right, so enough of the side excursion into hornpipiness. Let's actually play the tune. So, what's that?
Starts on an A.
Yes.
Okay, go on.
So at this point, nobody remembers how we started in the beginning, right? Other than starts on an A and it's a scale. The scale with the holes, right? B part. anybody want to try it as a faster hornpipe? No. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. It's a good slow hornpipe, right? All right. Now, normally I would ask, how about another tune by ear? I think I'm already seeing signs that the brains are full of tunes by ear, so I'm going to hand around the sheet music. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right.
So
So,
say, how much faster would it be as a fast one?
oh, well, it would be as fast as a reel.
Okay.
And the only thing I'm trying to do that's hornpipey is to play it with more dottiness. You know, instead of trying to. You can hear the dottiness even when I play it fast.
I can't play it, but I like the faster one.
Yeah. This is the,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, well, I do believe that this one is normally played fast. You know, sort of in terms of now the music, I did not manage to collate it properly this time. So there are 5 pages. Here's page 19. Those of you who are joining in online, the music has been posted at the Fiddle Club website, so you can access it. If you already printed it out at home, then you don't need to take a page, and we'll bring them back.
Just a sign up sheet. Everybody sign in their name and check the column that says February.
That
If your
way,
name's already there, just check the column. February.
right? Then
If you already printed it out yourself, then
we know that you got the music. Please
I
sign
can
it
check your
anyway,
name.
because
You
it
can check your name
it
yourself.
kind of helps us figure out.
If you haven't been here yet this year, it's just to write your name on the bottom, okay?
Okay.
And check if you get all the music for the year, check all the columns. Okay? If you don't get the music.
Right.
check the columns.
And we currently have opt-in if you want to get paper copies of the music sent to you. This just helps with our housekeeping so that we can figure out how many copies of stuff need to be prepared in general, and that we want to make sure that everybody gets the full book of music. So there are 5 pages. The first page is page 19. The last is page 23. So please check and make sure you've got all the pages, since I didn't collate them all. And then if we have extras coming back, I'll take care of them.
Actually, 20. I got it.
Okay.
Okay, 5 pages, you say?
There are 5 pages this time. So page 19 has the most,
the longest.
well, it is the longest, but I'll explain more about it. This is the most well-known laddie tune of all, Highland Laddie. If people know only one Scottish tune, there's a good chance that Highland Laddie is that
Something
tune.
we should learn for jams.
Well, I would recommend, if you want to learn for jams, that you learn the Highland Laddie on book 2, page 1, because that is the short version in the key of G, which is much more common. This is a special version, and I wanted to present it because Highland Laddie, the tune, has been a popular Scottish tune for centuries. This is from a 1705 source. So that means that Highland Laddie was played in the 1600s. And Highland Laddie in the 1600s was basically the tune that we know, but it was popular in the 1600s to play variations. These were called divisions on a ground. The ground is a theme, divisions are variations. There were books and books and books of divisions on grounds. There's a book published called The Division Violin, and they don't mean anything to do with mathematics. It's just like this, we're going to have lots of variations on themes in this violin book. So this Highland Laddie, we can tell it's an old version because it's in the key of F. And why is the key of F associated with older tunes? It is because it's the favorite key of popular lute tunings, and the lute was the 1600s instrument. If you want, the guitar was entirely unknown at that point. It was a Spanish instrument. It was not known. And there was something called an English guitar, which is now known as a cittern or an octave mandolin.
And it was still strings.
Yeah. And so the Spanish guitar, different instrument. So if you wanted to play a guitar-like instrument, the instrument in Scotland in the 1600s was the lute. Lutes play really readily in keys like F, D minor, G minor, C. So if you find tunes that sound old that are in those keys, it's a very good possibility that you're looking at an old lute tune. This version of Highland Laddie has a lot of lute features. So it probably comes straight from a lute source. And the George Bowie manuscript is just this guy named George Bowie who either owned this manuscript or put it together. It's sometimes hard to tell. He's thought to have played violin, as it's considered a fiddle manuscript. But he's obviously getting this from a lute source. It's got a lot of really lutey features. Let me play this version of Highland Laddie for you. So if you know a more modern version, yes, I'll just play the modern Highland Laddie for contrast.
What key is that one there?
That's in the key of G.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So modernized to the key of G and also much more fiddle friendly. This one has jumps that would have been really cool on a lute. and you're jumping from like what? Is that allowed? Jumping over two strings at a time. So this is not natively fiddle. And that's why I'm extrapolating to say, this sounds really lute-like. So let's play it. I made the mistake of not looking at the fastest section before I started. And those little 16th note decorative runs. So we don't really want to play it any faster than that, right? So that gives us our pace. So let's start all together now that we have the pace. little bit of a word about those decorations. That so I slur those in pairs because that is imitating the lute. The lute would have done these as one pluck with two notes. And it's a pull off, and on the lute it would resonate. On the violin, it kind of falls flat. But if you listen really carefully, you can kind of hear the second note showing up. And when you're going up, you definitely can. So one strum on the lute or pick on the lute would have been for two notes in those decorative figures. That's another reason why I say this is a lute piece, translator for fiddle, because those are not violin-y kind of decorations. Those are lute type of decorations. And they do translate to other instruments like guitar. So if you're playing this on guitar or mandolin, it would probably work out pretty well to do those kinds of things. Okay, do you want to play one more time?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so that's Highland Laddie. Well, let's go ahead and turn the page because I kind of got over exuberant and put in a lot of tunes this month. We better just work our way through them. Okay, so continuing with our theme of the lads, we have Bonnie Lad, lay your pipes down. I like to think that maybe the next line would be, and pick up that fiddle, but it doesn't actually say that.
Is the key of F one of your themes this month?
A little bit, because a lot of these tunes are old.
Yeah.
But so Bonnie Lad, lay your pipes down. James Oswald published it in the 1740s. So again, it is old. It may, it's most likely composed by him. He was cellist, composer, and he was one of the first to collect a whole lot of traditional Scottish tunes, put them in one collection. And then he liked to write variations and embellishments on them. This one he probably wrote for himself, not a traditional tune because it's not found elsewhere.
Sounds old.
It does sound old, right? It's very characteristic of James Oswald. Yeah.
Was F in D minor a key that was friendly to the harp as well?
Not as much. So the harp, I mean, it depends. Harpers would just retune their harp in whatever key they're going to play in. And if it doesn't have a ton of flats, yeah, it's probably. But this one is not a harp kind of tune because it has the sharps and then they're not sharp anymore.
Yeah.
So, like I said, he was a cellist. He also composed chamber music and classical pieces. So he's a real straddler of folk music and classical music, which honestly in his day people did not differentiate the way they do now. So let's just give it a go. So I found the first error, which is in bar 4, where it says a D major chord and it should be a D minor chord. So I'll issue corrections. They'll be posted at the website. You can print out the corrected page or you can just write it in your copy right here. James Oswald published 12 volumes of the Caledonian Pocket Companion. Each one has like 100 and some tunes in it. So 12 times 100, this is a lot of tunes this guy published. And some of them are his original music, but some are collected from the folk traditions of Scotland. So it's one of the first really big collections of traditional Scottish music. Yeah.
Does it end on the chord D major or D minor?
That's D minor. Okay, last bar, also D minor. Okay, so he also, in addition to these 12 books of tunes, they're relatively small. I actually have one. It's about this size. Yeah, so it's not the size of a full sheet of paper. It's like that much.
So the print's small, I guess.
Yeah, they're really crammed in there. There's a lot of tunes in a small space. Then he, being the kind of composer he was, he also took a number of the same tunes, sometimes the same arrangements, and elaborated them out with a bass line part. He was a cellist. He loved bass lines. So you can really get an idea what chords he was thinking of. So he did that for 3 books or 4 books or something of Scottish tunes. It didn't even cover the whole range of this Pocket Companion series, Caledonian Pocket Companion series, but it did give you a much better idea of what he was thinking chord-wise. Bonnie Ladd, Lay Your Pipes Down is not in those books. They all have names like the Curious Collection of Scottish Tunes and the Scottish Curious Collection of Tunes. Honestly, they really do have names just like that. So it's really hard to differentiate them. Somebody cataloged all this stuff. Charlie Gore cataloged all these publications. And I just go by the numbers that Charlie Gore gave them because the names are all almost the same. All right, Miller Lads. Miller Lads is from the Simon Fraser collection. And Simon Fraser published it in 1816, I believe, and then it got republished in the 1870s by, I think, his son, or might have been his grandson. Simon Fraser published a lot of Highland tunes, which were unknown elsewhere. So it was like a real collection that saved these tunes from getting lost. You kind of have to look for it, but in the back of the book, there are notes on the tunes, and sometimes he'll admit that he actually composed it himself, which was frequent. We're really glad to have his compositions because they're usually pretty awesome. And sometimes he will tell you who composed them or how he got them. A lot of them came from his father and grandfather were big singers, and they knew a lot of songs, and he wrote down versions of their songs. This one is by Gow of Dumnaglass. So it's just a guy whose last name was Gow. So it's not the famous Neil Gow or any of the Neil Gow family. And he's not really of Dumnaglass because that kind of implies that that's the name of his estate. This is not a guy with a landed estate. He was a miller. His sons were millers, and that's why it's called Miller Lads, because this guy Gow wrote it for his two sons who were joining him as millers. So the Gaelic name Gideon Bon Avular actually means the fair miller lads. So maybe they had blonde hair or light hair. So that's a Strathspey. And in the key of F. We're sticking with F for the moment. I mean, if you learn a few good tunes in F, you might as well have a whole set of tunes you could play in F, right? Once you've taken the trouble to adjust to that key. Okay, let's play it. Okay, I'm going to make a quick trip into the other room in order to get the Fraser collection so I can read the notes to you. I'll also pick up my James Hill collection while we're at it so I can read those notes. and I'm going to swing by my crock pot and make sure it's still on because it was on a timed cycle. And I want to make sure the food is cooked. You need the oven
No,
on?
I'm saying I put it on and I put my food in.
Okay.
Heat up.
Does it need any
No,
adjustments?
no, doesn't. I think it's just gonna sit there and
It's
get
all
warm.
take the oven.
Yeah, I think it'll just get warm. Are you new here?
I am.
What's your name?
Marilyn, nice to meet you. Patrick, nice to meet you.
This is probably a long way for you, is it?
Yeah, I'm in Rockville.
Oh, okay, but it's still on this side of the aisle rather than.
Yeah, it was like 40, 45.
I like it.
It was an interesting drive.
Great, a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you very much. That one just did it very beautifully.
So what have you been doing with your music?
I play in the Internet Community Orchestra, so I met Basil
Well,
there.
it's hard to hear it.
Before
It's
we
really, you don't,
Oh,
it's something like
that's
that.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard about it.
Making my way back through.
So I live in Arlington, so.
All right. So
I'm in a community orchestra. All I can say is-
this is the fiddle music of James Hill. And it's subtitled "The Lads Like Beer," but you can see that the author or the compiler of the James Hill collection thought that that was worth putting in bigger, brighter letters than the actual title, "The Fiddle Music of James Hill." And so it leads off. Well, it gives a whole bunch of biographical information about James Hill, which I might as well look up when he actually lived. Right. The first information they have is that in the 1841 census, he was given as age 25. So he was born in Scotland between 1813 and 1818. It says in this time, all census ages were rounded to nearest 5 years. Yeah, so it has that little quirk, right? And so he lived in various places in northern England for most of his lifetime. He was married. It doesn't say that he ever had any kids. He definitely worked in different pubs because a number of his tunes are named for the pubs. And then it says, okay, the lads like beer. This hornpipe was one of his happiest inspirations, blah, 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 blah. Played it at fairs, at the, sort of pub tent that was set up to refresh people attending the fair and added to the attractions of the carnival. A different point of view on the same thing is that this gathering becomes the gathering place of all the swindlers, gamblers, low and worthless characters for many miles around. An entire week of drunken profligacy. How many devote this week to idleness and vice? Wow. So it's either really fun or just this tremendous waste of time and moral. Yeah. You're right.
A lot of low life.
Right. So but his job was pub fiddler, and the other thing he got hired to do a lot was to play for horse race gatherings. So if you think about, like the Kentucky Derby or the why am I blanking on the one that's held right here in Maryland?
Something Downs.
Pimlico. Yeah, it's held at Pimlico, but what is it called? Okay. Anyway, Preakness. Yeah. Anyway, so he has tunes named for a guy who was a horse race owner. One named for the horse. Beeswing was the name of the horse. Why was the horse called Beeswing? Because he's fast. He flies. Flying Dutchman, also a horse. The Champion, probably a horse. Um, okay, he lived in on the Tyne, River Tyne, much of his time. So we have one called The Tide Comes In, and then we have one called The Steamboat, which many of you probably know that James Hill tune because steamboats were new and cool at the time that he wrote it. He's got one called The Cage, which is for people going down in an elevator down a mine shaft. So it's commemorating mining, which is a big deal in the North. Earl Grey is one of James Hill's famous tunes. And how did he know Earl Grey? Probably through the races again. So quite a few. Navvy on the Line. Navvying is like ditch digging or embankment building for railroad construction at that time.
We have that tune? We have a tune. with
Yeah,
that name. Is that-
Navvy on the Line is a James Hill tune. Bladen Flats is a race course. The Gateshead Hornpipe. The Gateshead was a pub. The Bottle Bank is a street on which there was a pub that he played, where he played. The Hawk. Oh, that's another famous Hill tune. The Hawk. The Newcastle Hornpipe, the High Level Bridge. So here's the High Level Bridge. It was a marvel of engineering at the time and well worthy of having its own tune. So High Level and Newcastle Hornpipe are some of his most famous of all. The quayside. So there's a picture of a crowded quay with shipping. So that was James Hill's world, and interesting to find a little bit about that. The Miller Lads. I have annotated my copy of the Fraser collection with all of the notes. And so Miller Lads says it was composed by a man named Gow who lived in Dumnaglass in Inverness-shire in the last century, which would be in the 1700s. So this was probably a tune that his father or grandfather knew about. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Page 21, we already learned by ear the lads like beer. So for the moment, we'll skip it over and we'll go right down to the other tune that's in the key of F. And we'll get back to the one in the key of C. But since I have the Fraser collection right here, right now, let me tell you what it says. So it's known as Merry Lads and Bonny Lasses. It got republished in the Athol collection in the 1880s. And that's part of why it kind of got repopularized and endures. The title in Gaelic, Flescachog as Calican, actually just means young guys and gals. So, Flesgach is not actually the common word for lad in Gaelic. That would be Gila. So it's just young guys, and Calican is lasses. But there's nothing about Mary or Bonnie in the Gaelic one, so I guess it's just assumed that they're Mary and Bonnie, because this was written by Simon Fraser for some very famous people. The Duke of Gordon was a big sponsor of music. His whole family was musical. The Duchess of Gordon was musical. All the kids were into dancing and playing music, and they were big supporters of Scottish fiddle music and composers. The Marquis of Huntly was famous for his dancing. He was the oldest son of the Duke of Gordon, had his own title. And the Marquis of Huntly was famous for dancing the Highland Fling. In fact, there are still versions called the Marquis of Huntly's Highland Fling, because he was noted for being a dancer. When he got married, lots and lots of people, composers of fiddle tunes, wrote tunes in honor of the wedding. So this Merry Lads and Bonny Lasses is the second tune of a pair written by Simon Fraser for the wedding of the Marquis with the Marchioness, his new wife. The first tune is a strathspey called the Marchioness Salute, and the second one is this Merry Lads and Bonny Lasses. So it's a wedding gift. The sad thing about that is that Mrs. Marquis of Huntley wasn't into dancing. And so she kind of squashed that once she, sort of came into her own. So all the Gordon family's support of music kind of went poof with that generation. Okay, so here's the Merry Lads and Bonny Lasses. I should have practiced this one, right? All right. So let's try it. I suggest we try it quite slowly. fast enough for now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was all a backdoor way of getting you to agree with me that the next tune, Merry Lads of Air, is actually easier. It's in the key of C, and the key of C has one less flat than the key of F. And this tune I really, really wanted to include because we got to the tunes for the lads, the toast to the lads, via Robert Burns. This is a Burns associated tune. He was friends with John Riddle, who's a fiddler, and the Merry Lads of Ayr. Burns was from Ayr. John Riddle wrote this for Burns and friends who would get together, play tunes, sing, and probably drink beer. And so it's specifically a tune about Burns and his friends, written by one of his friends. Robert Burns played the fiddle. He was known to have played the fiddle rather badly. He was much more famous for writing poetry and songs than he was for playing the fiddle, but he could play the fiddle. Yeah.
So he obviously read music, and did he collect tunes by listening to them by ear and then writing them down?
Burns collected tunes. Now, whether he wrote them down himself, I don't know, but he remembered them. And one of Burns's methods of composing a new poem was to get some tune that he'd heard and run it through his head while he was doing his work. For a while, he did a lot of plowman work, and he'd run tunes in his head while he was doing that, and make up the poems, which is how you get the poem to a moosie, to a mouse, that he wrote while he had plowed up the mouse's nest in the field. But a lot of times he'd collect a song, and sometimes the person he collected it from was like, oh, I only remember the chorus. And Burns would be, no problem, sing it to me anyway, and just la 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 for the verse, and okay, now I'll make up verses and use your chorus. And the other thing that the people would sing it, and Burns would say, well, that's a really good song, but I don't think it can be sung in public. And so he'd make a clean version and meanwhile collect the naughtier version. There is, in fact, a book of Burns songs that is naughtier. It's called The Merry Muses of Caledonia. And if you want the less censored versions of the Burns songs that he collected and embellished and wrote extra verses for, you'd have to look in there. So yeah, anyway, his working method really involved learning the tune, typically by ear. He contributed a huge number of tunes to the Scots Musical Museum, which is not a museum, it's a book. It was 6 volumes of song tunes, and a huge number were collected or words written by Burns, typically to a traditional song tune. But he wrote a song to this Merry Lads of Ayr that was written by his friend, so not necessarily old tunes. But it's an amazing collection because it preserved a bunch of songs that otherwise might have escaped ever being written down. All right, Merry Lads of Ayr, let me play it for you. So I think I might have an error there in bar 2 of the B part. I will investigate and see whether that is correct or not, because I want to play it differently than it's written there. And I've been playing this tune for so many years that I'm unsure at this point whether I migrated it from its original source or if this is a misprint. So let's go ahead and play it as it's written here, and I'll issue a correction if necessary. The just one thing on the notation, there's a DS and then there's a funny little SE symbol at the beginning. It's just so that you can properly leave off the pickup note when you repeat the tune, because the last bar is full. You don't need an extra note. So, okay, here we go. Let's play it slow for starters, please, for people who are learning it for the first time. All right, so that is Merry Lads of Air. Okay, on the next page, we already learned Kilty Lads, the one at the top. I fell in love with a red-haired lad. Well, this is a little self-indulgent because it's by me.
Oh,
Yeah. But I wrote it for my husband, who you've seen around the house. He's here. And back when we first got married. Yeah.
How many years is it now?
Oh, it's like 23.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Uh-huh. So, and his hair is not quite as red as it once was. But it's written in the style of a Gaelic song, so I thought it needed to have a Gaelic title. It doesn't have Gaelic words because my Gaelic is not up to writing actual poetry and songs in Gaelic.
so how do you pronounce that?
Oh, it's Hook me gol. Don hielo roy. And it translates quite literally as what it says in English. I fell in love with a red-haired lad.
I fell in love with a red-haired lad.
So it sounds even better with accompaniment. With the chords.
It's on 2 of your recordings.
It is. It's the last tune on my recording Glen Elg, and it's the first tune on my new recording Better Days. In different arrangements. Is the one on the earlier recording is just played as a slow air with harp accompaniment, and then it's played as more of a waltz on my newer recording with different instrumentation. So let's give it a go. All right, and it ends unresolved because it's not over yet. That's right.
You could have done February for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right. This is like a crossover tune, right? Okay, so on page 23, we have 3 jigs. The Lowland lads think they are fine. So this comes from an early 19th century collection that actually was more flute oriented. The Edinburgh Repository. It's dance tunes, mostly with more of a flute favored tunes in keys favored by flutes, or in arrangements that are more suitable for flutes. But it's advertised also for like every other instrument. Nobody ever said violin collection, everybody else don't buy this. Flute collection, don't buy it if you play fiddle. No, they didn't say, oh, it's for the flute and for the violin and the violoncello and for the piano and the harp and the whatever, So that is very typical, that all of the titles of these albums, all, these books of music all sound the same, because it will be a collection of the very best strathspeys, reels, jigs, and hornpipes for violin, flute, violoncello, piano, and harp, and other instruments. So it will be some variation of that. And so nobody, except unfortunately the National Library of Scotland, refers to these things by their actual published title. It's always who made it or where it was published or something else, because otherwise they all sound the same. So that is my one beef. The National Library of Scotland has done a great job of putting a lot of older collections, scanning them in and making them available for online lookup, but you can't look them up because you look up the exact title and it yields you 16 different publications that have nothing to do with the one you're trying to look up. And if you just look up the author, it won't give it to you. or even worse, the publisher. You know, the tune will be known by the publisher. McGlashan's collection. McGlashan was a publisher, and it won't even be listed because he's not the author, and that's not the title. But that's how everybody differentiates it from everything else. That's, you know, a collection of the finest Strathspeys and reels, blah, blah, blah. So Lowland lads that think they are fine from the Edinburgh Repository. So it says adapted from the Edinburgh Repository, and I don't recall anymore what I did to adapt it. It was about 3 or 4 years ago that I did that adaptation. So I don't think I changed very much significant, but there may be a few differences. Let's play it. Okay. So, is that fun? Yeah. That one's used as a dance tune for a dance called Waverley. And are people familiar with the Waverley novels by Sir Walter Scott? Sir Walter Scott, not F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's a different Scott. Sir Walter Scott, and they were immensely popular books. You know, it's kind of like, you know, like when what was like the book that everybody had to like check out of the library? It was like the girl with the dragon tattoo or whatever, right? So it was like that kind of book where when it hit the scene, everybody had to read it. They all had to have a copy of the Waverley novels, and so this tune is associated with the dance Waverley, that's named for the main character of that novel. All right, Soldier Laddie. This one is a 1700s tune. And actually, it might even be early 1700s, but the Petrie collection was 4 volumes published in mostly the early years of the 1800s, like 1804 and around then. There's 4 different volumes, so they all have different years of publication. But in this case, Robert Petrie was republishing an old tune that was in circulation. Soldier Laddie. So there's a very busy bar in the B part, whereas if you were playing this slowly, yeah, you could get all that differentiation there. I just say, okay, fancy ornament. Right. So I'm not making a big fuss over all of those notes. Just glide on through them.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't play them all, nobody's going to write you a ticket or anything.
Good.
All right. So let's play this slowly to start. Yeah, a little faster, right? Okay. Last tune. I loo nay a laddie but ane, or I love only one laddie. So this is a crossover too, right? For the Valentine's Day and for Robert Burns. It's from the Scots Musical Museum, which is that book collection I told you about that Robert Burns contributed lots of tunes and songs that he collected from all over places that he'd been, and he wrote extra words. So this has, in the Scots Musical Museum, it has a sort of short set of words that is the I lunea laddie but ain, and then it has a second set of words that maybe Burns contributed. I've forgotten. but they're on a different theme. Here's the song. Pretty straightforward, right? I should have taught that one by ear, huh?
Certainly sounds like one that can be sung.
Definitely a
It's a
song.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, should we do our ear tunes again one more time before we wrap it up? Do you remember Kilty Lads? How did Kilty Lads start?
With a B.
B! Yes, with a B note. I'm glad that that at least sticks. We may not know anything more, but we do know there's a B pickup note, right? So Kilty Lads. And you're welcome to look at the sheet music at this point if you want, but you should know this by ear because we spent time learning it. And how about our other ear tune, The Lads Like Beer by James Hill. Let's play it as a slow hornpipe because that was our agreed upon deal, right?
Oh,
It's a
so
square.
in the B part, the third measure,
Uh-huh.
it is a G sharp.
No,
or
it
a
is. Just like playing
Right.
super square.
One G sharp. Yep. One G sharp, and the other note is a G natural.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us online if you're watching this that way. And thank you all for coming over. And we're going to break up our workshop now and continue on to potluck and jam session here at my house. And otherwise, see you next time online.